Hey, I just got back home from the gym, and today I just want to say a few words about calorie counting. There's a lot of debate about whether people should count calories, whether it's a good strategy. I personally don't like it as a long term strategy. Personally, it does work well for some people who really just like having rules and quantifying everything. Largely a matter of personal preference and personality type. But one thing that I think is beyond dispute is that everyone should count calories for just a few days as an exercise. If you've never done it before, you should count calories religiously for about a week so you can see just where you stand and just how far off you were in your estimate of how much you were eating. Because studies have shown that, pretty much everyone sucks at estimating that, and they just wildly usually underestimate how much they eat and overestimate how many they're burning with exercise. The average person is off by about 20 or 30%. Obese people are off by about 50%. So you need to do this as an exercise just to open your eyes and make you realize, how wrong your numbers probably were. Another mistake I see a lot of people making is they'll often double count calories burned from exercise because their total daily energy expenditure will already have been calculated with their exercise factored in, but then they'll work out and add in the calories they burned in that workout so that those are double counted. And the other thing that can happen is if you use cardio machines at the gym, most of them in their estimate of how many calories you've burned are including your BMR in that estimate. So that can cause you to double count too, or triple count if you're making both mistakes. So you need to be very careful about all of that. And even if you don't want to count calories as a long-term strategy, doing it for just like a week or so is going to make you better, at least at estimating calories or mindful eating or whatever other strategy you choose to employ. So, as far as calorie counting apps, if you want to use an app, MyFitnessPal is certainly the most popular and easiest to use. It has a food database that's really convenient. But I don't love the formula they use for estimating your caloric needs and expenditure. So I personally prefer one called Mike's Macros by my friend Mike Vicanti of On the Regimen because he uses much better formulas for calculating your macros that actually they take your body fat percentage into account. They do a much better job of separating, your training day and non-training day macros. And the downside is he doesn't have a food library, so you have to manually enter everything in, which, long term, I can see that being a pain in the ass. But again, if you're doing this just as a short term exercise, I think that's actually better to force yourself to do that because it just forces you to think more and build more awareness. And the other two things I want to say are first off, make sure you're calculating your calories, your caloric needs, with some kind of formula that takes your body fat percentage into account and not just your total body weight. So Mike's Macros does that. If you Google, calorie calculators on the internet, you want to look at something called the Catch McArdle formula, which is the most commonly used formula that does take body fat percentage into account. And then the last thing I want to say is, you can Google calories for stuff that doesn't have them listed, particularly if you're eating like at a chain restaurant of any kind. There are always nutrition calculators on the internet. If you just Google Subway nutrition calculator, Boston Market nutrition calculator, you can find those on your phone, and they let you plug in exactly what you're eating. And then you can also Google, rough caloric estimates for common food items like how many calories are in an apple, calories in a cup of rice, etc. So almost anything you're eating, you should be able to just Google it on your phone and find a pretty close estimate of the calories and macros that are in it. So, it's a little bit of work, but it's not too much work to do this just for a week. And everyone should do that to see if they're really overeating or undereating, or, if they're accurate with their macro count. And I recommend doing it again for a few days anytime you start a new diet. I recently made the mistake of not doing that when I switched to the ketogenic diet. And the result was I way overestimated how much I was eating. And I started to get overtrained and kind of sick. Had to take a few days off at the gym, spend a few days counting calories, realized how badly I had screwed up, and then, added more calories in. So always do this for a few days once again when you start a new diet. And I'd also recommend, even if you've counted calories before, if it's been a year or two, it's worth revisiting this exercise just to make sure your perception of how much you're eating hasn't drifted off in one direction or the other.